This is the Fight Fan with your host, Pete Hoffman, and huge event going on this weekend, UFC 262. And who better to bring in than Phoenix Carnevale? I appreciate the time. Thank you for hopping on. How you doing? How you holding up?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm in New York, so it's nice that we're getting back to life a little bit.
Yes, no masks. How do you feel about that?
Oh man, I'm so thrilled. It's like now it was fun when people looked like ninjas for a while, and then it got old real quick.
How where do you live, by the way, in the city? What part, you in the city? You outskirts? Where are you? What area?
I just moved to New Jersey, but super quick into Manhattan. But I've lived in every borough except the Bronx, which is weird because I'm Puerto Rican. You would think I had started there.
The Boogie Down? I mean, come on. That's where my family's from. We come from the Bronx, Morris Park. I have some people from Throgs Neck. That's where you. That's. I'm also Italian too, so that's what I think. That's like a nice Italian area over there.
Absolutely. I'm half and half. I'm half Puerto Rican, half Italian.
There you go. I am 75% Italian, but you would never know by the last name, and the German just kind of pops out. But it is what it is. So, UFC 262, the
Yes.
second live event with a massive crowd. We saw the presser yesterday, stuff like that. You know, you being so close to events in the past, and you've been watching this whole time where a pandemic has hit and we haven't had any fans in the crowd. How have you seen in the first pay-per-view event just the impact of the fans?
So there's a positive and a negative to everything, right? So for the commentators, because I've been a commentator as well, there's something cool about almost not having fans there in a way because you're extremely zoned in and it becomes about telling the story with your voice. But the negative part of that is there's a fan energy, especially with MMA fans. We're so diehard, there's just such a entertainment value to it. So I think it's good and bad. If you got to fight without the fans, you learned that super honed in experience. If you're one of those people that thrives off the energy in the crowd, you get a different experience too. Like for me, when I fought, and I only fought amateur, I think I performed better when there was a crowd because that entertainer in me, was just like, was fueled by that energy. So it is very different. But I'll tell you that first big one back, 261, is one of the greatest we've ever had. So maybe there's a thing there.
Maybe that's the thing. I have to say, like I said it all the time. I was okay watching fights without fans because I was just fiending for it. But as soon as you bring the fans back, the energy that was brought back, it was incredible. It was an amazing night of fights, and it was like, is it because we were so suppressed with no fans that kind of boosted it up that much, or was it really just the fights were that good?
I think it's a combination of the two. So one of the cool things about when there wasn't fans there, and I'm a sports nerd as far as MMA and martial arts. So hearing the coaches clearly, right?
Mm.
Like there was just something so cool about that. And then also now when you watch it with fans, you're like, oh, this is a party. You see the people watching, you see the energy, they cut to the crowd, you get that whole ambiance and feel. So there's pluses and minuses to both elements.
So, but like for you, someone who's been so close to, like I've sat ringside a couple times, but not as much. You work there; it's a different feel, obviously, when you work and when you're fighting all that other stuff. When you're just relaxing, you Phoenix,
Mhm.
where is the best spot? What would you prefer? The perfect scenario for you to watch a fight, where would it be?
Definitely not a bar.
Yeah, no.
Unless like it's me and all my friends, right? Like me and Dean Thomas are going to develop some really funny stuff about watching fights with friends, but um it's I think like on my couch or ringside.
Right.
It's one or the other.
The couch is also, but now let me ask you a question though. If you're on the couch, because ringside's different, obviously you have everyone around you, but on the couch, is it just you? Do you have anybody else over? Do you want to be in
Very
your zone?
specific people that are allowed to watch fights with me.
Okay.
Very specific people. My fiance and the dog, they qualify. We're probably engaged. He doesn't annoy me during fights, but there are definitely people I don't like to watch fights with.
Yeah, I've had those moments before because obviously you're tight with a lot of fighters, so you build relationships with them. So things can go really well, things can go really bad, and I've been on those bad ends where I'm like, like for example, I tell the story all the time, but like Francis Ngannou, we met him before. I've interviewed him a few times. He's held my son in his hand. It was awesome. He's just a nice, sweet guy.
Yeah.
When he beat Stipe Miocic, my wife was like, "Yeah, get him." Yet, meanwhile, I have plenty of friends who are friends with Stipe Miocic. So I was like on the other end of like that final shot that came down. I was like, I can't take that right now. I can't. I'm feeling a lot of hurt right now in my soul.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about an incident. So for the most part, when I'm watching it in public with people, because of my job and, people know me from different things that I've been on, like either MMA fighting or UFC Unfiltered, I kind of keep to myself. When I'm home, I get to actually be a fan. So I'll start yelling at Max Holloway. I love Max Holloway, by the way.
He's
And
amazing.
then the most unprofessional moment recently was when, like, I could never do this in public. So Dustin Poirier beats Conor McGregor. I jumped, ran around the living room, kissed the television. My fiance was like, you broed out. Like, you would have chest bumped somebody if they were close to you. I can't really do that, at work or anything. So there are moments when, it's nice to be alone because you get to have that ultimate fan. I have those Joe Rogan, Daniel Cormier reaction moments, definitely. And that was one of them.
Your eyes are bugging out like, oh
my God. It was crazy.
I had for the Conor McGregor Poirier fight, I was trying to do like a live broadcast. It was the first time I tried to do that, and I was like, that's the last time. But I had like my 3 kids were upstairs, plus 2 of my nieces were over, plus my wife was upstairs, and I'm like, I don't have a huge house, but I'm like just trying to keep it down. I don't have a studio set up yet, so I'm like just trying to like keep it chill. And then all of a sudden, when it happened, I started screaming like a lunatic, and it was like a soft scream. And it sounded so awkward. I was like high pitch. I'm like, that was not what I needed to do right now. But it was very interesting. But again, like the feelings you get as like a fan, as you build these relationships, it's surreal. I've actually spoken to a bunch of athletes that say they've literally said, I've felt more nervous going into a title fight that I have somebody that I know than playing Game 7 of a World Series.
Understandable. Yeah.
It's a crazy thing. Yeah. Listen, Phoenix, you've been doing MMA for a long time. You've been in the media for a long time. Give me some of your all-time favorite moments. If like some of the favorite people you've worked with, obviously Dean Thomas. Who's some of the favorite people that you've worked with?
Well, I'll tell you this. I didn't come from a journalism background or anything like that. I was an actor first, and I wound up, studying martial arts. So I started doing commentary and things like that, and I was on ESPN on some show, and Dana was like, "Hey, we'll give you press access. Give it a try." So it really happened like that. So I had to learn as I go. I really had a. It was like I got a championship shot when I was, maybe a blue belt. Like that's kind of how it happened for me. So in the beginning, everything was so new and interesting, and fighters are so freaking nice. And the UFC people were really great to me too, because they saw that I loved the sport and that I was really hungry. And one of the most amazing things was I was such a big fan of Anderson Silva. He was the only person that I would get super starstruck over.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to myself, coming with an acting background and a comedy background, I'm not going to do this interview as a professional interviewer. I'm going to do this interview like almost parodying Chris Farley when he used to interview people on SNL. So I tell Ed Soares, I'm like, listen, I'm going to do this thing where I'm really nervous around Anderson, because I was really nervous around Anderson. So they told Anderson I was going to do it. So the whole interview, I'm like, remember that time that you kicked Vitor in the face? That was awesome. And if you remember that Chris Farley skit, it was just like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, I always, because of that background, I never wanted to be like this sort of serious journalist, even though I can do that. I always enjoyed like having more fun with the athletes and being one of the boys in a way, so to speak, where we could just sit and have a conversation and nerd out over things. And so I would do that, but then I would also have that other side where it was like a serious interview, and people were really receptive, especially when they know that you also train. They talk to you differently. I remember having such a great relationship with Frankie Edgar because Frankie saw me box. And ever since then, it was just so much easier to talk to him. And so I think that that's a big part of it, is just that for the most part, MMA community, people don't realize, like, fighters are really nice.
Yes.
They're really nice, and they're open, because there's just a code of ethics sort of that happens with martial arts, or even sports athletes in general, because of how hard you have to work. So I've had like great moments with Matt Serra, and Pat Miletich, and even Ronda Rousey. Actually, she really liked me, which was nice, because she doesn't really like a lot of the media.
Anybody.
Yeah, so it's, I think it's, you approach people with respect and they notice that.
I've noticed from the years of just speaking to fighters, and compared to other athletes, and it's not to knock other athletes, but the reality is that there's so much that goes into MMA. It's not just boxing. It's not just jujitsu. There's so many. It's a huge chess piece that we're all trying to figure out. And I don't want to say that they're all brilliant, but it comes across that way. So when I do speak to them, it's like, oh my God, you're not the quintessential athlete where it's like, oh, I'm just a chooch and
Yeah.
I could tackle somebody. No, like there's legitimate intellectual fighters and athletes in this sport that you don't really see in other sports, and they do it. There's like this everyone thinks they're just brutes. They're just like these idiots, and it's the
So
exact
not,
opposite.
yeah, so not true. A lot of these, especially a lot of these guys that come from the background of wrestling, and women too. And I say guys, I mean everybody, but they're college educated. They're really interesting people. I mean, I could talk to Daniel Cormier for hours. Every time we get a chance to interview him, I always have like 50 more questions, and they're like, Phoenix, we got to go. I'm like, it's just really interesting.
Just 10 more minutes, just 10 more minutes, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's how it goes. But listen, but that's one of the things I like to ask my guests too. Like, how did you get into training? How did you get into mixed martial arts? Like clearly, like you're an actress, you have all these things, but like, why mixed martial arts? Because that's not a typical thing for everyone, you know?
Well, the truth was, I got into martial arts later in life, in my 20s, but I always wanted to study. I thought I knew it because I watched so many kung fu movies, and I would try to like copy it. So a lot of it started because of my absolute love for like comic books and pop culture and Bruce Lee.
Mm.
So I didn't want to look like the girls from Vogue magazine. I wanted to look like one of the X-Men. And they were tougher, they could fight, but they were still feminine, which was a big deal for me too. And I just, when I saw Terminator 2 and I saw Linda Hamilton being able to like kick ass with the boys, I knew that someday I was going to train. And I had started with traditional karate because MMA wasn't big yet. And from karate, I went to Muay Thai and Western boxing, and then the Ultimate Fighter hit. Like, I was watching MMA when it was like you would have to have like a D-scrambler, or a hot box,
Mm-hmm.
it's called at the time. So I would see some of the pay-per-view events, but it wasn't until the Ultimate Fighter where I could watch it all the time. And I would do some karate forms, and as beautiful as it was, I'm like, I'm gonna get my ass kicked. Like, I need to really learn. So I would learn a little jujitsu here and there. And again, I didn't ever study jujitsu like consistently, because somebody ripped my hip open during a training session.
Mm-hmm.
But I would always take black belts to the side and like, show me this and show me that. So when I would do commentary, or when I would interview people, I knew the hell I was talking about. You're not gonna be like, what was that? I was like, okay, that's De La Hiva guard. Okay, that's butterfly guard. So I studied it enough to have open eyes. And so I studied a little bit of everything. I mean, I've even tried Eskrima, Wing Chun. I just love martial arts. There's so much history and science and sports science that go along with it. It fascinates me. All of it fascinates me.
I haven't trained enough. That's my biggest issue. I mean, this life takes over, and I've trained on and off a couple different times. And when I did, I mean, I pepper the senseis with questions, and there's always like, nowadays, I mean, forget about it. There's all different forms, there's all different styles and stuff like that, but it's endless. There's always something to learn, which I love about that, you know?
Yeah.
Who you mentioned X-Men. Who's your favorite character, by the way?
Wolverine.
Yeah, he's badass. Yeah.
Wolverine is my favorite because he's always had, it's the ninja, the samurai. He's got all these stories in Japan. So Wolverine's my favorite, but I really like so many of the I like the classic team.
Right.
Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Storm. I love all of them.
Rogue.
Rogue.
Is she
Yeah.
class? She's one of the classic ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like the movies at all? No.
Meh.
Mm.
Days of Futures Past was dope. They were trying to be like, sorry for the other shit we did. Sorry if I can't curse.
You could say whatever the hell you want. It's fine.
Marvel Universe brings it out in me. And I'm such a big comic book nerd, pop culture nerd, but yeah, they were okay. I'm hoping that now they're with Marvel, we'll get a little better version of them. But Hugh Jackman, he did his thing.
He did. No, listen. I like the X-Men. Are you more DC or Marvel? Like, is it that there's a big difference there?
Way more Marvel.
Really?
And it's just because I grew up on it. I'm sure DC is cool. I love Batman, but I'm just way more Marvel.
Who's your favorite Batman?
Who's my favorite Batman? I mean, I go with the classic Michael Keaton, even though the Christian Bale ones were really good too.
They were so badass, right? I think the story, the Christopher Nolan's shot storyline was really good. He did a really good job. But yeah, I think if it's not him, it's gonna be Michael Keaton. Even though you see, was it James Patterson is gonna be the new guy?
Yeah, I was all about it, giving him a shot, right? Because like sometimes we as an actor, sometimes people pigeonhole us. They don't realize what we can do. So I was like, I'm going to give him a shot. And then he said he wasn't going to train. And then it was like, all right, you know what? Now I don't respect you.
That sucks.
And I'll just say it from this perspective. Like, there's a lot of similarities between acting and fighting, like a lot. And there's even a Bruce Lee quote. He says, a good fight is like a small play, but played seriously. So a lot of similarities between acting and fighting. And I know, and my fiance is a professional stuntman. So I know that there's several things the human body can't do and learn overnight. And that's why you have stunt people, because they specialize in those things and you don't want to hurt yourself.
Right.
But for the most part, to get into a character, you have to get into your body. So if you want to embody a person, you should train at least a little bit, because that's also part of the emotional thing. Like Matt Damon had talked about playing Bourne when he was going to be Bourne, he trained. He was trained by Jeff Amata. Jeff Amata was the fight coordinator on that, and it changed the way he moved around as he moved into the character, because doing that physicality helped him really be Jason Bourne. So for Patterson to say that he's not going to train at least a little bit, it was just like, then you're not Batman. Like, how you're just going to do the lines, you know?
You're just an actor. You're not really. That's kind of that's disappointing, because I saw him in Tenet. Yeah. Did you see Tenet at all?
Yes, I did.
And that like gave me like a new perspective. Like, okay, he might actually do okay. He was actually decent, but clearly he needs a stunt double. Clearly he's not doing the fight scenes.
No,
you know what I mean?
And I get that, because if he's not a big guy, he's kind of a frailer guy. He's not going to be able to. But at least try it a couple of times so that you can feel what Bruce Wayne feels to some extent. I mean, like, I know it's acting, but yeah, you know what I mean? Like, if I was going to play if I was going to play a pilot, I'm obviously not going to fly a plane. I get that. But you want to be in the cockpit and know where the buttons are so that you understand it, enough.
You want to at least know how to turn a freaking thing on if possible, right?
Yeah, like just feel it, just be able to get that sense memory as we talk about as actors. But there, I think that do as much as you can do as an actor without getting hurt. And, this is me making assumptions based off of an article. This might be not true at all. He might be training his ass off and I don't know what I'm talking about, but I do believe that there's a certain level of physicality that you should perform as an actor, because that's part of your character.
Well, I like the Matt Damon thing. Sean Patrick Flannery, another actor who's huge into mixed martial arts. I had no idea until I talked to him that he had his own dojo. Like he had his own. He trained. He did all that stuff, and that to me is like incredible, because I'm like, I love watching his films. I like seeing stuff, but I don't really ever dive into the behind the scenes stuff. So when you do know somebody that's like really that into it, it makes the film that much better. That's why I love watching films that are in New York City. Like, I don't care. It doesn't make a difference what the hell movie it is. It could be Cloverfield, for crying out loud. Yeah. If I'm watching a movie that's based in New York City, I'm like, oh, I know exactly where that happened. That's freaking awesome. Yeah. Phoenix, let's get into UFC 262, because there's the last pay-per-view was incredible. How can this one match up to that? Well, it can. I mean, it really can. No, you don't think so already? You're shaking your head.
I don't think so. But look, I could totally be wrong. It's just that, I guess I still have a hangover from that event, which was so good.
All right, well, let's see. Is there any fight on the undercard that really strikes to you that you're really interested in?
On the undercard.
Yeah,
Well, I know Angela Lee is fighting Valentina's sister,
Antonina, yeah, Shevchenko.
Shevchenko. So that's interesting because I really like Angela Lee, and she's on a 3-fight skid. So I'm hoping that that fire in her is there, and just to see what Antonina like has to show, because Valentina is such an absolute beast, and they're just such a talented duo. I think that could be under the radar. I think it could be a fun fight.
I look at Angela Lee because it's funny, and I've spoken to her plenty of times, and I've always told her this. When I see her fight, she reminds me of like a female Cowboy Cerrone. Like there's something about her that has that vibe to her. And Cowboys had his ups and downs too, but like I feel like she's like a couple steps away from really. If there's someone that can compete against Valentina, there's not, which there aren't that many. I feel like Angela Lee could at least put up an actual fight. Is that am I off with that?
No, I think she's really super talented. She's older, isn't she? I don't know what her age.
I think she's like 32, if I'm
Okay.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's around
So
that. Yeah,
I mean,
32.
she's just a fun fighter either way. I really enjoy the women's bouts. They always like come to show up, and you just see the evolution of women in mixed martial arts. So I'm looking forward to that fight.
In sports in general too, because I always say this to everybody. I work at WFAN, so it's a sports talk radio station. We talk Mets, Yankees, Jets, Giants, Knicks, Nets, Rangers, hockey. We don't really talk a lot of MMA, which I'm pushing. That's all I do is push. But there's not a lot of females that we talk about because it just doesn't hit our radar because there's so many other things to talk about. But MMA is the one. UFC is the one that literally has put women on the map, and that not whether the pay is equal or not, I can't tell you, but the fact that they headline cards constantly and they do great at it. I mean, that's even whether or not Dana White wanted to do it, he did it, and it was a good job by him.
But if you ask him about it now, he's like, I'm so glad that I changed my mind and I was 100% wrong. And he'll like say it outward openly. If you look at the difference between MMA and boxing and how women are treated in MMA versus boxing,
I know.
it's beautiful. I mean, since I started, the way people talk about women's fights has completely changed. It used to be like, oh, she's hot, she's this, or she's that. Now it's like, oh my God, that girl has incredible stand up. Like people are just talking about the talent of the fighters now. You could hear it. I was in a bar for Whaley and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and people could not freaking wait for that fight. And it wasn't because they were like, oh, those girls are so hot. It was just like, oh, they're so good. And it was amazing. And I've really seen that shift because it wasn't like that when I first started.
No, and it really has shifted, and it's something that I've grown to appreciate because the talent has risen. It's not just the Ronda Rouseys, it's not just the Amanda Nunes, it's everybody. Everyone's raised the game. Now, why do you think though that MMA has been able to at least compete in that way with females, and the females can be on that level? Who is it? One fight in particular? Is there something else you draw back to?
I think it's just that the sport is so young, and because it's young, everybody's come up together. And once we were given an opportunity, the doors continue to keep opening. There's more training partners for women's now. There's more women in the gym in general, so that makes like a tremendous difference. And it just gets better and better. And now that there seemed to be a market for it, that's really what it comes down to, right? Is there a market for something or not? And I think that's fighting is, as Dana says, which I agree with, it's one of the most primal things, so people will watch it. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody watches it.
Yeah, I love Rose Namajunas because everyone sits there and goes like, "Oh, she looks so hot when she had the long hair," and it's like, who really cares? Did you see what she did to Zhang, to Wei Li? I mean, that was freaking unbelievable. Never in the wildest. Like I sit there debate with people. You're right. We're just sitting there debating about which way this fight's gonna go and all this stuff. And now I'm not sitting there being like, oh, she looks amazing. Nobody cares about that, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Now, Paulo Costa, on the other hand, I will say that that's the sexiest man in the UFC. No doubt about it. I will say that, and I'm okay with that. I'm married. I got a wife.
Okay. All right. Feel you.
Am I wrong with that? No. How far off am I?
His clothes are a little too loud for me.
Well, listen, his style, he doesn't have style, that's for sure, but he's got that Ricky Martin vibe. Let's put it that way. One of my favorite fighters, and somebody else I've kind of got to build up a nice relationship with, Shane Burgos. He's going in against Edson Barboza. That is a freaking fight. Like, that is scary. Like, this is one of these fights where I'm like, I love Shane. When I saw him versus Emmett, I was scared. This is just as scary in a different way, and I'm like, I worry for the guy. But this is an amazing fight for Shane Burgos.
Yeah, this is where he really gets to shine too, if he is going to shine against Edson Barboza, because Edson Barboza is always like hit or miss, right? Like he's either on, or he's repeatedly had trouble with wrestlers. He does has great jiu-jitsu, has a ridiculous stand-up. He's so powerful. He's one of the best athletes in the UFC. He's just a tremendous athlete. I love him dearly as a person. He's a great person. So it's just one of those matchups where you're like, I almost wish they weren't matched.
I know.
Because I don't want to see Edson fall further down, but you also want to see Shane rise too, because he's one of those young prospects that has this like incredible future that really is the full package in a lot of ways. So I'm like, I kind of wish they weren't matched up, but I get it from where they are in the standing.
Well, you have to give credit to Mick Maynard and Charlotte Shelby, because it's like, that's one thing that, again, like we talk about this, boxing doesn't have that. Like, they finally just made the Anthony Joshua Fury fight. Like, I mean, come on, how many years are we talking about?
Yep.
Heather Hardy has actually made her way to MMA. Now she's back to boxing. She's actually fighting tonight.
Yeah.
But she made her way to MMA because that's where you get good fights and you get better matches and stuff like that, and you get better, better money at times, I guess, for females. But yeah, this is, I have to say, like, this is one of those fights on paper. Could steal the fight. This could steal the night. Like, that's how good of a fight that is, in my opinion. I love both fighters. They're good. They're going to be amazing. And again, like, you're right. It sucks but that's every single card I see. There's always that one fight where it's like a legend, a guy who's just been there forever, who in 2 fights, if he keeps on winning, could get another title fight.
Right.
Or just be out of the promotion.
Or wind up being that midline gatekeeper, hanging out for a long time, one of the best to ever do it, but not to win it. That's what happens. I mean, Dan Hardy was just recently talking about this, about these new crazy, strong up and comers going against these sort of older legend type guys, and putting you in this weird position where you're going to make a name off somebody. And he was kind of complaining about it, but I got his point. And I was just kept thinking to myself, I know, but that's the fight game. Like, that's kind of always the way it is. You don't really get to pick and choose. You almost wish there was like a legends division. Not saying that Edson belongs there. He doesn't, but we're just talking about this like kind of as a side note. I think Edson still belongs in the mix, but he is more of the veteran here, which, gives us this thought to kind of go off into this topic. And, but yeah, that's how that happens. You make your name off of somebody who's already an established name, and here we are. Right.
No, that's what we're talking about. Like, like Andrei Arlovsky doesn't seem to want to hang him up anytime soon, and I'll always watch that guy fight. And I'm like, oh, we should just stop with like putting him against like young killers. Like, we don't need that anymore. I want to watch a fight, but it's not worth his brain damage, which is what happens.
But it's like, who's to say when you can't go up against the young killers, because somebody's going to make a name off of you, right? If you're the matchmaker. But for us as fans, we're like, hey, can you just match these guys up a little bit more evenly for their own safety, because we love them? Like, don't give like it just happened to Cowboy.
I know. I know.
So it's like, okay, if you're going to give him a retirement fight, that's why I almost loved that Diego Cowboy matchup, because that made sense to us as in terms of where people were.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, listen, it's always going to happen. We're always going to be that when should somebody hang them up? When should they, it's in every sport, it's in everything in life.
I'll tell you this as like a side note. I don't know if my boyfriend made this one up, but I really appreciate the joke. He goes, fighters are like strippers. At a certain age, you don't want to see them anymore.
That is great. That is phenomenal.
And my thing is, I always feel like a fighter should stop fighting when we're uncomfortable watching him.
Well,
There comes a point when someone starts fighting and you feel uncomfortable. I remember when Anderson fought Izzy, I was uncomfortable
yeah.
with the whole situation. I posted this video of me like biting my nails off, and it got like 20,000 views because I think people had the same sentiment.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think a lot of us felt that Israel could have done a lot more, but he respected the opponent across from him and wanted just to walk out with his head up. You know what I mean? Because we know Izzy's that good. We know he could have destroyed him.
But is he smart? And he said that because he studied Anderson so much, he always felt like he was looking at a trap being set for him. So he was tentative too. So
No, right.
it makes sense, but interesting.
Yeah. The one thing is we talk about matchups, and the main event is between Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. Tony Ferguson yesterday was very much. I love it was a Dana White privilege, which is what he said, which is the best line I think I've ever heard all year. I'm going to stick with that for a while. You know, Tony is in such a ride right now. Like we've seen, he's had a little couple issues recently. What type of Tony Ferguson are we going to see versus Dariush? I mean, Beneil is freaking unbelievable. He's a killer. Tony really has to step up his game to be competitive versus him because I'm nervous. This is another nervous fight for me.
Well, I will say this. I am not a professional MMA fighter. I am just somebody who studies. So this is my opinion. Sometimes you got to go back to basics. You got to go back to cleaning up your basics. Tony Ferguson sometimes gets a little like, all right, this is how I'm going to train. I'm going to do a basketball, and then I'm going to jump rope. Then I'm going to jump on top of this ball. Then I'm going to play Parcheesi. Then I'm going to like, just, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, defense, straight 1-2s. Just like keep it simple, keep it clean. So that's almost what I wish he did. I don't know if there's mental stuff too. I know that he is going to be fighting very angry, defensive, chip on his shoulders, something to prove. And for some instances for fighters, that works magnificently, like Kamaru. But Kamaru will still keep them basics and keep it clean and win the fight. So for Tony, I don't know if he's like concerned about the flash or wants to be too creative. It's almost like you wish he would hone it in just a little bit. Yeah. And what Dariush is so kind of crispy clean with his basics and just his power and his wrestling is so, if you took a snapshot of him at any moment, he has like perfect form, right? It's crazy.
Incredible.
So I don't know. I'm a little worried for Tony for a few reasons, because this is a tough fight, but if he does pull this one out, it puts him right in the mix again too. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see where this goes.
And it's funny because I've always thought like Tony gave Khabib the biggest like scare as far as like a challenge, as far as like, that fight's going to go to the ground and Tony's ready for it. But now I see like it's not the same Tony that scared me. So I'm now scared for Tony in a different way. But it is going to be very fun. It's going to be very interesting. Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira. This is another crazy fight. You think about these two. I mean, Charles Oliveira, you think about what he's done to get to this point, to get a title fight. And it's like that lightweight division is just so stacked. It always has been. So the fact that you didn't even really know about him as much compared to some other fighters, it's a shame. So the fact that he goes up against Michael Chandler, which is now his only second fight in the UFC, a lot of people say they got the Dana White privilege. But what do you think? I mean, we've seen Chandler in Bellator. Is he up for the challenge?
Huh? No, I'm good. Thank you. Sorry about that. It's one of those matchups where I just say to myself, this has to be good, right? It just has to be good. I don't know if it. How do you look at it? Do you look at it as like Chandler doesn't deserve to be there? Because I think he does.
I mean, I look at it as in the UFC world. I mean, I've seen. I'm torn because clearly MMA world, he definitely deserves it. But in the UFC pecking order, it's like you want to see Poirier get another chance. But clearly Dustin said, I don't care. I want that Connor trilogy, and I'm okay with that. So that made me feel a lot better about it.
Yes. Yeah. That's kind of how this one got put together. It wasn't
Yeah.
like skipped everybody. And so that kind of made me feel good about it too. I just think in terms stylistically, there's so many variables, right? Like Michael Chandler is a freight train. He's I want his body studied by science. Such an athlete. He's like got 0% body fat. He's super explosive. He's very fast. He fires off his strikes very, very quickly. Oliveira stands kind of, upright, but he can strike too. I mean, we talk about his jujitsu, but he can strike too. Again, people forgetting about that. His clinch. So I don't know. Chandler usually like backs people up. He wrestles you. He makes you really uncomfortable. He's got great wrestling. It's just there's a lot of variables in this one. I don't even know if I can pick because anything can happen at any moment. But I think that's why we love this fight.
Oh yeah. That's why I love MMA. That's why I love it, because I sit there and go, people ask my opinion all the time. I do my best. Like the only one I really nailed recently was Dustin Poirier. I go, you guys are crazy. Those odds for Poirier, I would bet on him. I put a ton of money on Poirier over McGregor because like clearly you guys have no clue what's going on. But for the most part, I always am just like, it's a toss up. I could sell myself either way. This one, I mean, to watch what he did against Dan Hooker, to the way he ran through that, through him, that shocked me. I did not think it was going to be that easy for him. So for that, I could say I could see him do the same thing to Charles Oliveira.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, if the fight goes to the ground, it's like Oliveira is just so good with his ground game that that scares me. No matter how good Chandler is, Oliveira is just very impressive. So it's like you almost want that to be a stand-up fight.
I definitely do. I really do.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Either way, I like Michael Chandler a lot. I like Oliveira a lot. I think it's one of those things where it's a win-win situation to just have the matchup. I mean, if it's a boring fight, I would be surprised. I would be absolutely shocked. I really would.
Yeah, no, that's not gonna be the case. That's why I like the card a lot. I mean, listen, it's never gonna have the same. 261 was amazing. We just needed those moments. The Kamaru Usman. I mean, literally, we've never seen Jorge Masvidal like that before. And that was just a shock. Now, let me ask you a question. In your honest opinion, whether you talk to him, not, who knows? I looked at Masvidal and I thought he didn't look healthy. I thought he was under the weather going into that fight. That could have led into, potentially like, him taking a strike and not just taking it as well as he normally has. How do you feel that fight went? Do you feel that he was 100%?
I don't know if there was a health issue. I mean, he didn't mention anything about it.
Never will.
I don't know. I just also think that, so the technique itself, we learn it a lot, working a lot is like to tap that front hand and like kind of pull it down or distract it and then just come over with that hard straight cross. It was just such a perfect shot that I'm not going to say like maybe he was sick and something was wrong with his chin. It literally landed in the most perfect way with the velocity and force. Kamal turned his hip over perfectly. It was textbook, right? So that's just what happened. He got caught in what even Masvidal was like, that was a beautiful technique.
I know.
It was. And we've learned it. We worked on that a lot. I've done it in conventional boxing. They teach you that in Wing Chun, like trapping to knock the hand down and come over the top. It's just like one of those like really just beautiful techniques. And, Kamaru, I love Kamaru. If you talk to him one-on-one, if you ever talk to him one-on-one, he's such a great guy. And he is like just someone who, oh, what would you say? Okay, fine. And then he goes and works on it and just gets better and better each and every time. So I don't know. That guy is definitely going to break even more records very soon.
I mean, if you watch him from The Ultimate Fighter, I mean, that's where I first saw him. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this guy's boring. He just takes you down, this, that, I think. But seriously, what he's evolved into, it's incredible. And his striking now is on anybody's level. It really is. It's impressive what he's done. Phoenix, any fight in particular that you're really looking forward to in the near future? Anything that really sticks out to you? Anybody that you want to see?
I love Dustin Poirier. When Dustin Poirier won, I felt like I was telling Dean Thomas this the other day. I felt like the Jedis had taken over again and there was balance to the force. Because look, Conor McGregor is not a bad person, nor is he a good person, right? He's a
Right.
complicated human being, which we all are. You talk to someone today who thinks you're awesome. You can talk to somebody from your past that thinks you're an asshole. We all have like good moments and we all have bad moments. And Conor is that. He is one of the most magnificent and enigmatic characters I've ever seen in this sport. He's one of the most self-actualized people. How can I not respect Conor McGregor? But I don't like a lot of the stuff that he's pulled,
Mm-hmm.
especially as someone from New York who fought to get this sport legal in New York, and then the whole thing with the bus situation. I was pissed about it.
Yeah.
And I was bitter about what he pulled, and then punching the old guy, and I was like, damn, but he's also done some great things. He's also encouraged a lot of people. He said something wonderful to Carissa Shields recently, like the money that he's made inside and outside the octagon. It's hard not to respect him.
You saw Forbes, right?
Yes.
Highest
Yeah.
paid athlete. It's crazy.
Right. Not highest paid, but not just like paid in the sports, really more of what he's done outside, right?
No, he 22 million he made fighting. 158 came from whatever his proper 12.
So this is like something people should study and respect him for, because how many athletes go and they're on 30 for 30 after that.
Right.
So even though I'm like about to kind of poo-poo on Conor, I also want to acknowledge how much I respect him and the things that he's done. But in the fight business or the fight world, or as a martial artist, seeing Dustin Poirier beat Conor McGregor felt like, here's one for the good guys. Like the good guys won, the martial artists won. Because I've come to terms with the difference between martial arts and fighting, because I come from a martial arts background, and understanding that they're different, and having to deal with the WWE like theatrics sometimes, and just being like, shut up, Phoenix, it's not martial arts, this is fighting, deal with it, right? Which
Right.
I've come to terms with at times. But then you get Dustin Poirier, and you get him winning, and winning so successfully the way he did, it feels like a win for the good guys.
Right.
Way, right?
Yeah.
So I want to see number 3, and I'm sweating and I'm stressed because he's waking the dragon by pissing Conor off. So now you got pissed off Conor, which is really good Conor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to see it, but I'm like, oh, come on, please, someone take care of Dustin. Make
Please.
sure it's okay.
Well, no, it's funny you say that, because I have this conversation with so many people. It's like, when there's a rematch, I talked to so many people, like the Kamaru Jorge Masvidal rematch was not a very good rematch for Masvidal. I didn't think he was going to win it. I didn't think he was going to get knocked out. I just didn't think he was going to win. I think it was a bad matchup for him. But for the most part, you give these guys an opportunity to come back. They do well, like Conor versus Nate. Like, he was not going to lose that fight. He figured out a way to win. Could he have done the same thing as Khabib? I don't know about that, but I would have given Conor a better showing. Yes. Potentially, and that's what you're looking for. So the fact is, yes, you're right. He's waking the beast there. Dustin Poirier is with Conor McGregor. That is definitely scary. That is something that
this Conor's fight IQ is up there.
Yes,
it's like, it's up there. I mean, honestly, as much as he makes me mad, I would put my stuff aside for a second and want to watch a fight with him, because I want to see what Conor sees when he watches a fight, because his IQ is that good. There's a couple fighters that I would just want to sit down with them and see what they see. Like Daniel Cormier has Detail, which is like phenomenal on ESPN. I would love to sit and watch a fight with John Jones. I would love to watch a fight with Valentina Shevchenko, because I think she's a damn genius.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really like to listen to Conor, talk about fighting and see what he sees. Just any old fight and watch him break it down, because I just think he is an unbelievable fight IQ. Dustin as well.
Yeah.
And Dustin has a sick team too. His strength and conditioning coach is one of the most talented people I've ever seen.
Who is that? Is that
Bill Daru?
Daru, right? Exactly. Yeah. That's what I thought it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Anderson Silva is another guy that I'd like to watch a fight with. I would. Yeah. That was my favorite fighter growing up. Like that's well, Andre Arlovsky was my first original love, and then Anderson Silva. Watching him, I'm just like, this guy's amazing. When I watched, because I was a big Rich Franklin fan, so when I saw him, destroy him, I was like, who is this maniac? Who is this machine? It was just, it's incredible. But you talked about Valentina Shevchenko, and I think she is the best female in the sport, and that's saying something because Amanda Nunes is the GOAT.
Yeah.
Give me, if that fight happens again, which I'm not sure if it will, which you'll probably have 135 if it does. Give me, does Valentina Shevchenko? She the only person that can stop Amanda Nunes? Exactly.
Such a hard question.
Exactly. That's what I'm here for. Come on, let's go.
It's because we've seen, this is the thing, we've seen Amanda run over people. We've seen Valentina technically demolish people. There's the difference, right? So we've seen like Amanda Nunes with a sledgehammer and Valentina Shevchenko with like Lego pieces that eventually like knock you out. You know? So the thing is, we've just seen Valentina do prettier things. It's prettier. It's a prettier fight to watch when she fights. But Amanda is a terrifying fight to watch. I doubted Amanda Nunes once. I doubted her once, and I was sadly.
Which fight?
Cyborg.
Right. Yeah, duh.
The only time I've ever doubted her, and I was like, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
So
that was crazy. That was crazy. That was a crazy finish.
Yeah. So it's a very difficult. I don't know if it's just Amanda is that strong or that threatening, and Valentina only feels threatened by her and it doesn't feel threatened by literally anyone else. And if that changes the way she has to approach that fight, it's very interesting.
Do you think though that like Amanda beat her that second fight? Like I wouldn't say that like Valentina lost either fight. She didn't lose either fight. Scorecards stink. I hate judging. I hate all that stuff. So but I couldn't sit there and say, oh, fair and square, Amanda Nunes won that fight, because I don't think Valentina lost it.
I think I don't remember because I haven't watched it in so long, but I remember feeling like Amanda won, but I never felt that Valentina was demolished, which is just, again, just showing you how damn good that she is.
It's a lot of respect on both sides.
For sure. Like it probably would be Amanda's retirement fight, right? Like to go out with a bang on the biggest threat that she's ever had, you know, besides like her losses in her earlier part of her career. Because Kat Zingano still loves to bring that up. But, you know, it's interesting to see that. And I know they want to bring Kayla Harrison, or may not bring Kayla Harrison over. I don't think that Kayla's ready yet. I think she's a threat, but I feel like that she does need more time, which is not an insult. That girl's a beast. But so we'll see. Amanda still has another fight coming up. I don't see it being too hard for her.
I know.
So we'll just see what happens.
That's the hardest part about. That's the only negative right now in these divisions. Like, there's no featherweight division, bantamweight division. There's really no contender for. I mean, I know we're gonna watch Julia Pena fight her, but I mean, is that really a contender? And same thing with Shevchenko's got more challenges. I will say Shevchenko has a much deeper division. The strawweight is really good. But I mean, that's the issue, is like you have the best fighter and that you just can't match anybody up with them.
Yep. Yeah. It just seems like, you know, Pena is talented, but I don't think I don't, you know, I've been wrong before. Not often, but I've been wrong before.
I'm wrong all the time. Just ask my wife. Phoenix, thank you so much for the time. Is there anything that you personally would like to plug? Anything you want to promote?
You know, listen, I'm freelance right now. So if you guys are looking for an MMA host or a commentator, I am around. I'd love to take some meetings. I also am doing a ton of stuff on fitness platforms. So you can work out with me on the TRX platform, soon the Everlast platform, and things like that. And then of course, just follow me on social media. I've always got some fun stuff to show you and to say.
Awesome. Phoenix, well, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it, and enjoy the fights, and we'll definitely talk soon. Okay.
We'll love that. Yeah. See you later.